Hi guys, this is Neama Rahmani and this is your Law School Survival Guide. I'm here with my friend and colleague Liana, and we're going to tell you everything that we wish we knew when we were in law school.
Let's start with case briefs. I think that's probably the most important. Let's also talk about the fact that they give you homework before school starts. So your first day of class, you're going to show up. You should have already read X amount of cases.
So law school, for those of you who haven't been, they teach you based on the case study method. So they don't actually teach you what the law is. Instead, you're reading cases, and from those cases, you need to somehow pull the law out of the case and try to figure out what these judges are saying.
And figure out what the law is, right? So you're reading a case, you're like, okay, well, this is what happened, and then there's just pages and pages of judges' opinions. And let's just be real, judges like to hear themselves speak, and also they like to write a lot.
So you're gonna read these cases, a lot of them are old, maybe back from England, and you need to determine four things, and we call it IRAC. So let's just go through it. IRAC, so that's gonna be issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. What's the issue? What is the case about? Why are we even here? That's the most important thing to determine when you start reading a case.
I had different color highlighters, okay? So all of my facts were in yellow, let's say, and then the issue would be in pink. And I always would go back and I would spot the issue last, right? So you wanna go through, read the facts, figure out what is happening and what is the problem, right? Who is suing whom and for what?
So the issue might be, in like a criminal case, did the defendant make a knowing and voluntary waiver of his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination? That's the issue. That's what the case is about. Because if they waive their right to remain silent and they say something, we all know that it can be used against them in court. That's just an example of an issue.
So now you have your facts, you have the issue, and now you're gonna get to that opinion. You wanna read all of that and figure out, okay, how are the judges applying the facts we have at hand to the issue, and what is the rule that they're coming up with that they're going to use to apply to that issue?
Yeah, the rule is obviously very important. That is gonna determine really what the law is. And of course, the judges, the opinions, and certainly not your professor, they're not going to tell you the rule out the gate. That's like giving you the answer. So you're going to have to read through this opinion, figure out what the issue is, and ultimately, what is the court rule? And then you can't just give the answer, right? You know, you got to show your work, and that's where the analysis comes in. The professor is going to ask you, okay, you know, and of course they only refer to you by your last name, at least where I went to law school, very formal. They're gonna say, Mr. Rahmani, why is that the rule? Why did the judge make the decision he or she did? That's where the analysis comes in, right?
Right, and then that's why if you've already read your case beforehand, you have your IRAC or your different color highlighting, you know exactly where to look, right? Because if they say, Mr. Rahmani, what are the facts? Then you know where to go, and you're not going to talk about every single thing that happened, just the most important, and same with the rule, same with the issue, analysis, and so forth.
And of course, the conclusion, you gotta have a conclusion, right? Any piece of written work does. And ultimately, you're gonna conclude that for whatever reason, this case concluded the following. And the reason this is important is we live in a common law country. So what does that mean? How is that different from other types of law? Common law means that once these judges in these higher courts issue their opinion, that's precedent, and that opinion can be used, and it's actually law in other cases. Now, in a civil country, laws are only what we call statutes. That's something that the legislature passes that's on the books. Judges can't make law, but in the US, when a judge issues an opinion, that opinion can be used in other cases.
So this is what you should do. Now I'm gonna give them practical advice, okay? You're gonna go on quimby.com and you're going to locate the case that you have to read, and you're gonna download. That is, okay. So you should.
So what's Quimby? Quimby was not around.
Okay, didn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay,
Back
so
in the
Quimby
dinosaur days when I
for
went.
$15.99 a month. Okay, you can cut your study time by more than half. All right, so you pay them this fee. You go on there, you type in the case name, and almost every single case that you would learn in school pops up, and it has an IRAC, and it's legitimate. It's not just a few sentences here and there. It's actually very thorough, and so you can print that out and have it with you. So on days where maybe you just didn't have time, because let's just be real, law school is tough. There's a lot of reading to do. And if you're interning, you're externing, you're working, you have a family, whatever it is, it becomes difficult. So Quimby is just a little tool that I discovered my second year.
It sounds like Quimby is the new Cliffs from Cliff's Notes.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I haven't heard of Cliff Notes since high school.
Yeah.
Okay?
So when I was a kid and I was walking to law school uphill both ways, we would buy these Cliff's Notes, and ultimately that had all the answers.
I remember when Barnes & Noble and Borders, you remember Borders?
Yes,
they
of
would
course.
sell Spark Notes. Spark Notes.
Yeah. Obviously, we're talking about bookstores that pretty much don't even exist anymore because Amazon took over. So I would probably prime that if it was a book, or get it on my Kindle, or just go online. Sounds like Quimby is the way to go for you law school students. But,
It sure is.
but really, this is under the big umbrella of briefing. You can't have hundreds of pages. You gotta distill that into a brief, really a short analysis of that case, because your finals, and we're going to talk about that in a bit, are really going to have you analyze these cases and these issues based on these opinions.
Right, and it's also when you go back to study for finals, and this is just very brief because we'll talk about it, you don't want to be reading or rereading the case in its entirety almost, right? So you'll get better at it, which is why I think it's important to brief yourself initially, right? Quimby and all that stuff, they'll help you down the road, second, third year. But the more actual briefing you do, the better you'll get at it, and the better you'll be able to sift through all the side facts and everything that's really important, and you'll be able to really pull out those rules that's going to help you in the long run. So definitely make sure you're getting in the habit of actually briefing, because you do want to include certain things in your outline because it's going to help you on your finals and also the bar.
Yeah, so let's talk about outlining, right? So outlining is what everyone does to prepare for finals, because law school finals, some classes have midterms. When I went to Harvard, most of my classes, it was just a final. It was either in person, 3 to 4 hours, or take home. You pick it up at 8 a.m. You have 8 hours to get it done.
Take home finals?
Yeah, 8 hours, but it was not fun. You're literally right.
Okay, yeah, that's
This is a long time ago.
right. Okay.
You're writing for 8 hours, or even
Okay,
the
okay,
kids
you
now.
get that one.
Yeah, they're probably typing for 8 hours. But finals, what your professors do is they present you with a fact pattern, right? Some made-up case, but it's gonna have all these legal principles that you're gonna have to pull out, spot those issues, right? We're gonna talk about issue spotting, analyze it, and you gotta tell your professor what the issue is and really what the judge should rule in the particular case. But let's talk about outlining, right? What did you do for outlines? Did you make your own? Did you get other people's outlines?
I'm just
Get
really
those 2 Ls
being
and 3 Ls?
blasted around here, okay? So I initially started outlining because, during orientation, they kind of talk about all of these things. And orientation is, for me, it was a week before school started. So it was certainly not enough time to really grasp these concepts. It is a different world. It's like nothing I had done before. So my outlines were like pages and pages long. And then I made some friends who are 2Ls, 3Ls, and so they started sharing their outlines with me. And what I ultimately ended up doing is I would go through theirs and just kind of see how they modeled it. And then I would use my class notes and my case analysis and professor's notes, and I would combine all of that together. And then the week before finals, I would just go in and take out all the unnecessary stuff and try to minimize it to just a few pages, so that's ultimately what I'm learning and processing and preparing for the final.
Yeah, so you have, your briefs, right? Your IRACs. You're not going to have time to spend, when you're studying, right? You're going to study for 3-4 classes at a time. You really got to distill it to that basic information, right? That's when you're not going to have all the analysis, for instance, right? You need to know, look, if it's a contract, this is offer, this is acceptance, this is what you need for a contract. Because when you go into that final, or even the bar exam, the examiners, the committee, they're going to know, okay, this is a negligence case, right? So you're going to need the 4 principles, right? Duty, breach, causation, damages. That's going to be on the tip of your fingers. So you got to make sure you have all those principles. So if you happen to get a fact pattern that involves negligence or a contract or whatever the case may be, you can boom, 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 hit the points you need in your outline and kind of move on.
And another point I want to make on that. So really, it depends on your professor. So my torts professor was a stickler. She wanted to see on the final exactly the rules that she gave in class, okay? So my outline for her courses had let's say the rule and then the elements and then her definition, because that's what I wanted to memorize. Other professors don't really care. The bar is really all about, as long as you can explain it, then you should be okay in your own words.
Yeah, that's where really you gotta see previous tests, do practice tests, know your professor. They're what we call black letter law professors. They want to know like the law. They don't want to know the elements. But you got your theoretical types, right? That just want you to like.
Those are usually the Harvard grads.
Yeah, the Harvard ones. So my torts professor. So torts, those are the types of cases that we handle here, personal injury cases. So I had a take-home final for torts on one of those 8-hour marathons, and one of the questions was, I won't forget, this is back in the 90s, and it was the following: the law of torts is really easy once you get a hang of it. Explain. So, those are those ones where like you got to write about anything and everything. I actually remember what I wrote about, but if you have those philosophical types, you want to make sure you tailor your answers to those types of people. I don't think that professor wanted to know the 4 elements of negligence. He wanted to know
about creativity.
Yeah, why we even have this system in the first place.
So one thing you mentioned that I think is important is definitely make sure that you see other exams, okay? Because law school exams and the bar are not like 5-paragraph essay format, okay? The only professor that had a midterm my first semester was my torts professor. So I walked in there and I walked out like, oh, I killed it, okay? I did not write the heading and IRAC format. No, I just straight up wrote an essay. I was like, killed it. And when I got the exam back, it was like all red. Like, this is not how you write for a law school exam. So just make sure you see them because it's very structured. Every line belongs somewhere, right? So if it's the rule, it's the analysis, the issue. You want to make sure your exam is easy to follow because otherwise you're going to get docked points, but also you just won't pass the bar.
Yeah, so we've talked about briefs, we've talked about outlines, we've talked about practice tests. But let's talk about something that really has nothing to do with grades and I think is very important in law school. Really maybe the most underrated thing in my opinion, and that's networking. I think that when you're in college, everyone's kind of focused on grades, maybe some partying. Obviously, you're not going to party that much in law school because you're in grad school now. It's the big leagues. But networking, a lot of your colleagues will either be a source of business, source of jobs, in a very different way than it will be when you're in college. So tell me a little bit about networking and how it's important. So I'll give an example. Liana worked for a firm, and my partner Alan knew the attorney that she worked for, and then when she applied, he gave an amazing reference. So she was a no-brainer offer in large part because of the experience that she had, but also networking with some senior attorneys.
The reality is it's who you know and sometimes not what you know. And a good network can also be your professors. I had somehow stumbled into a bankruptcy class my second year of law school, and I had a really great relationship with my professor, and he actually recommended me to his friend who was a federal bankruptcy judge over in Costa Mesa. So he had talked to the judge about me, and then I ultimately ended up sending a writing sample and my resume, and I got the externship. So it's not necessarily something I wanted to do, but it was incredible experience.
All right, so we've all seen Legally Blonde. We know study groups, right? The smart people tend to get together, talk about the cases, prepare for finals. The people they think really shouldn't be there are excluded, right? Sometimes those people that are excluded are actually people that end up killing the finals. So what are your thoughts on study groups? Should you study alone? Should you study with a group of crazy law students?
So one thing I want to say is just make sure you're not completely deviating from what works for you, right? Because you've gone through X amount of years of school and you know what kind of works, whether it's flashcards, outlines, whatever. So what I did is I would take a few days to really memorize and understand the concepts on my own. In my room, just tunnel vision. And then I would meet with my study group. That way I can have a discussion with them so that I know what I'm talking about because now I understand the concepts. I find that it's almost impossible, at least for me, to memorize or really comprehend a concept when there's just a bunch of conversations and people talking and then people are like, wait, but this is what I think we're supposed. No, I would remove all of that, concentrate, learn what I need to learn from my outlines, and then go in and have conversation. And in that way, we were able to, I think, make it more productive, in my opinion. That's what worked for me.
I agree. I think you need both. I mean, obviously, you got to sit there. You got to read the material. You got to learn it at least to a base level. And then to get to that next step, there's gonna be concepts that you don't understand, they're foreign to you, they're confusing, and having someone else explain them to you, having you explain them to your classmates, it can be helpful. I wouldn't rely entirely on study groups. I wouldn't make them too big, and I certainly wouldn't have the crazy gunners, as we call them, in your study group. Maybe 2, 3, 4 people at most, just to bounce some legal concepts and ideas off them. I think it's a good idea, but again, it doesn't replace the individual studying, in my opinion.
Right, and I think it's really important to be able to explain a concept to someone else or a peer. Even sometimes they say it in the mirror, because when you're saying it, it clicks and it may make more sense than if you're just reading it 10 times on a piece of paper.
Also, if they're asking questions about it, that helps you really kind of take a step back and say, hey, do I know this? Where are the holes in my understanding? You can kind of
Exactly. So it's a hybrid model, I would say, between solo and study group.
One very important thing when you're in law school is time. I mean, law school, both the classes themselves, the preparation, and everything you need to do in between, the reading, the outlining, the briefing, takes up so much time. Make sure you don't fall behind, but also you gotta have fun. I mean, law school, you've all seen the movies, you've heard it from your friends. It can be incredibly challenging. From professors who are cold calling on you, the Socratic method, the high level of competitive students that you're dealing with, it can really kind of put you in a rut. So make sure you carve out 1 or 2 days a week to, go out and blow off some steam.
Right. Mental health is super important. So whether it's yoga, hanging out with friends, going to bar reviews, even whatever it is, just take some time to yourself. But like Neama said, have fun. Some of my closest, nearest, and dearest friends are people I met in law school, at orientation. We got through the 3 years together. We got through the bar. You need these people in your life. So have fun, make some friends, and comment below and let us know if you have any suggestions.
Yeah, and just so you know, bar review, emphasis on the bar, drinking. So it's not studying for the actual bar.
Do some of that too. Make sure you go.
So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
If you like what you heard, like, comment, and subscribe.
Don't forget to click the bell so that you get notification every time we post.
And if you want to see more law-related content, click on the links below.